Hello, I'm Dave Renfro, and I'm a seasoned amateur photographer and an amateur printer. Uh, what I've always struggled with is getting the right size printed onto the paper to go onto something like this. So this is basically a very custom size. It's 122 millimeters by whatever. Uh, but I managed to get the right size for this and mount it on this board. So what I want to talk about today is a process of taking your image out of your camera and making a print that would go onto the face of this board. So out of the camera is this 4x6 print, which has an aspect ratio of 3:2. This one is 8x6, so it's an aspect ratio of 4:3. So we'll talk about first correcting the aspect ratio by cropping the image out of the camera. So the other thing that I want to talk about is the DPI setting, which is the dots per inch setting that actually comes out of your camera. It's part of your JPEG file. In this camera, it comes out as 300. So it's got a 300 DPI setting right out of the camera, which actually makes a pretty dense photo. But the higher your DPI is, the more dots you have in there to make a sharper, more defined photo. So I'll go to the computer now, and I'm using Affinity Photo, and I'll show you some things on Apple Preview as well. But I just want to indicate that you don't need any fancy editing software for this. Most editing software has a similar set of dialogues to make the changes you have to make on this. So we'll go to the computer now. Okay, so here we are in Affinity Photo, and I just wanted to show you the print dialog, just to quickly have a look at that. So I'm just going Apple Print, and I've got a preset here that'll print to 4x6 borderless paper. So down here at the fit type, notice I have this set at a scale of 100. But what you can do is you can go to this shrink to printable. And what that'll do is the program will actually figure out the DPI and everything needed to take your image, in this case the long edge is 6,000 pixels, and shrink it down to the right size for that size paper. But what we want to do is we want to print the image to a specific size in inches, millimeters, onto a paper that's, well, that's larger than what we want to print, right? So basically we want to set, for what we're doing, we want to set the paper to US letter and the scale to 100%. And it's showing that we're out of range. That's what the red means. But we'll fix that and we'll get an exact size on the letter paper. So I just wanted to show you that you don't need a specific program to do this stuff. So this, I'm going to show you Apple Preview. And I've set it up so the Apple Preview will just show my pictures if I just select them in Finder and double click on them. And there you go. There's the two pictures I selected. Another thing I like is you can quickly, Apple I, have a look at the properties. So this we see is right out of the camera. It's my 6,000 by 4,000 pixel picture at a DPI of 300. This one, however, is out of my phone, and it's around 3,000 by 4,000 pixels and a DPI of 72. So this picture is really intended for just use on the screen or the internet or something like that. But I wanted to show you that the print dialog is pretty well the same as Affinity, and it comes up default as scale to fit. So it's now on US letter with a border. So we'll change that to borderless. And the reason you've got these margins here is because the aspect ratio of the camera, the image out of the camera, is not the same as the aspect ratio of the paper. Anyway, so this scale to fit works perfectly fine on either of these pictures. Here you have to select a picture this way. So this is what it did on the 72 DPI picture, and it's just about the same aspect ratio, right? But if we go up to what we want to do, go back to scale 100, then you can see the 72 DPI photo blows way up. And if we go back to the 300, that's what that looks like. So that just shows you that you don't need to use anything really fancy for doing what we're doing here. While we're in preview here, I thought I would show you a slide that I put together explaining the aspect ratio. So the aspect ratio kind of determines the shape of the image. So you can see I've stretched this one out to 9 by 6 to kind of match the 8 by 6 board here, just to compare the two shapes. So the aspect ratio is independent of units. So for example, this is the pixel figure out of my camera, right? Which is 6,000 over 4,000. And it's equivalent to 9 by 6 or 3 by 2 or the number 1.5. So this number 1.5 is kind of handy because you can calculate different things if these numbers aren't obvious, right? So in other words, 4,000 times 1.5 is 6,000 and so on. So our job is to make this photo this shape. So this aspect ratio is 4:3. And what I've done here is, this is the short side of my photo out of the camera times 1.3 gives you that for the long side of the picture. And this ratio is equivalent to 8 by 6 or a 4:3 ratio, or this number here. I hope that explains the aspect ratio. We're back in Affinity Photo, and I've got my 6,000 by 4,000 image right out of the camera. So what we're going to do now is crop it to the right aspect ratio. So I'm going to the crop tool here, and it comes up as a default as constrained, at the full size. So what I'm going to do is use Affinity's custom ratio mode here, and then it gives you the ratio. So in here I can actually put the inches, because as long as the values are in the same units, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to say I want an aspect ratio of 8:6, and then that's going to give you the shape of your new image. So what you can do is, now that you've got this constrained to the 8:6 or 4:3 aspect ratio, you can do whatever you want here as far as the size or the position. So the only thing to notice, if you crop really close, you're losing. This is now showing you what the new image size will be. So you'll notice that the numbers are fairly small here. So you don't have a lot of pixels to work with as far as you're getting your image on the paper. So what I'm going to do is just go up here and take in the full thing and just move it over. So I basically want to keep this thing, and I don't want to cut that thing in half. So I'm going something like that. Okay, so I'm happy with the shape and look of that, and then you just hit apply, and now we've got a new image size. So now we've got the 5334 by 4000 image. So this is the right shape. Next, we just need to resize it to make it fit on our paper. Before we do that, I'm just going to move back to preview and show you some math on some slides there. Here's a simulation of printing onto a 8.5 by 11 US letter paper. And so I want a size of 8:6 exactly. So what I need to do is take my dots per inch, and I haven't changed it out of the camera. This is the same as what came out of the camera. And so dots per inch times the length I want, 8, gives me 2400 on the long side. So basically I want to reduce my file size down to 2400 by 1800. And as long as it's these numbers and this number, then everything will work out and you'll have exactly the 8:6 image. So back in Affinity Photo, here is our newly cropped picture to the right aspect ratio. So I'm going to resize this down to the figures from the last slide with the 2400 pixels on the long side. So right now we're at 5300 roughly. So I'm going to the resize dialog here, and this gives me my existing pixel size. So you'll notice this little lock, and other programs will have something similar to this. And this locks the aspect ratio. So if you unlock this, each one of these numbers can be changed independently. So you kind of have to be careful with that, because if these don't match your aspect ratio, then it'll crop the picture. So I always keep it constrained. And now all I need to do is change these pixel figures. Now in Adobe Affinity Photo, they have a way that you can actually just put in the inches. So right now, at the size of the image I have now, it could print to roughly a 17-inch by 13-inch piece of paper, right? uh, so we could just type in our numbers here, but I kind of like sticking with the pixels and doing the math because it's very important that you keep enough of your pixels in the paper and not enlarge the pixel size of the image. So I'm going to just change it in the pixels that I've calculated at 2400. And if I go over here, this will automatically calculate it. Okay, so now I'm at my 2400 by 1800 pixel size. And I could just hit resize. And there you go. There's our new size in the right aspect ratio. And you may ask, hey Dave, the size didn't change. Well, in a way, the DPI setting is really not needed for working in a computer program because the program always wants to shift the physical size on the screen to what you selected. So in fact, the image size did change, but Affinity Photo just throws it back at you, the same physical size on the screen. But we're working with the printer, and the printer is always looking at that DPI figure. So going back to this kind of has to do the math to make up the distance you want here. This is a simulation of what the image would look like printed onto a US letter paper size of 18.5 by 11. So our 2400 by 1800 image size will give us exactly the 8 inches by 6 inches at the DPI of 300. So this DPI is the same that was in the camera. I haven't changed the DPI. So what I want to look at next is maybe increasing the value of the DPI, and that'll actually give us more pixels per length within the image, and hopefully we get a bit more detail out of it. So I tried this, and this is another simulation. So I changed this to DPI to 600, but left the image size to 24 by 1800. And you can see it basically just reduces the image size on the paper by half. So, I mean, we could double these figures and then come up with the same size again. But I'm taking another approach here. So I'm taking my full size but cropped image of 334 by 4000 pixel size, and I'm taking the long side and dividing it by the length I want. So the 5334 divided by 8 gives you this number. And I've just ignoring the decimal here because if anything you want this number smaller, not bigger, because it's better to print a little larger. And so the lower the number is here, the larger the image is. So this is a way of getting the most out of the printer. What I've got here is, by calculating the DPI, I'm making the best use of my pixels that I have available to me. Okay, here we are with our cropped photo, but this is the full size, the maximum number of pixels I can get to get the aspect ratio right. So going to the resize dialog, what I want to do is I want to change the DPI setting without affecting my file size. So what I need to do is I need to untick this resample button here, and what that does is it'll stop the program from recalculating new sizes. So if you want to just change the DPI, you just need to untick that resample. And so I'm just going to put in my 666 in here for the DPI and hit resize. And now all it's done is it's just changed that setting in the JPEG file. So if I go back here, we'll see that my image size is still the same, but I'm showing a DPI now of 666, which the printer will use to make a perfect 8 by 6 image on my paper. I'll just go to the print now, and spang, there it is. So it fits nicely onto a US letter size paper. Note that it could also go on to an 8 by 10, and pretty well it'll be stuck right in the middle like that. So in the scale is set to 100. That's pretty well all you need to worry about. And then you can just hit print. So here we have the finished product, and it's exactly 8 inches by 6. So that should fit on there nicely. I'm just going to cut it, and we'll see how it looks. So I've trimmed the 8.5 by 11 paper, and this is the final product, which fits perfectly, and it makes the most of the printer. It's a 600 DPI print. So I hope you've got something out of this, and I'll leave some comments in below with some links to some other interesting YouTube videos that discuss this as well. Thanks for watching.